Passion Harvest. Hello, passionate listeners and watchers. Welcome to Passion Harvest. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are in the world. I'm Louisa, your host, International Passion Ambassador. I'm so excited for my guest today. His name is Matt Omo, and Matt Omo is a leading authority on the power of sound. Matt has decades of experience working with sound healing techniques, spiritual psychology, breathwork, shamanic, and intuitive practices to bridge cultures and traditions from around the world to empower people to live their full potential. Matt's passion is to demystify the healing power of sound, making this wisdom accessible to the modern lifestyle through practical processes that are effective and impactful at reducing stress, relieving anxiety, building resilience, and allowing for a more harmonious way of living. Sounds amazing. This is his story and this is his passion. Matt, welcome to Passion Harvest.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're on the show. I guess let's start with, well, since you're the sound guru, what is sound?
What is sound? Yes, well, it depends on what culture or tradition you're leaning into.
Okay.
I think, and this is one of the things that I always find is a bit of a hurdle for people in the Western world to actually embrace sound in a healing modality and to be able to work with it to shift our consciousness and help us to live in harmony and really take command of our lives. Is that we look at it as more of entertainment, right? Sound is music, music is sound. And then we start to lean into this idea, especially when you're working with instruments and things, that there's going to be a performance or that they're going to be entertained or this kind of thing. But if you trace back through ancient cultures and traditions, you'll find the use of sound as in mantra, even in prayers. There's music. There's in some of the indigenous cultures, they use it through their ceremonies and different rituals. It's used as a sacred medium, and it actually, if you look then at their creation stories, majority of cultures and traditions and creation stories actually lean into this concept that all is sound, all of consciousness is sound. And then you get to lay on top of that the modern science, the more of the quantum physics and what we're starting to discover as we explore the brain more deeply, as we explore our physical world more deeply, is that we really are all vibration. And if sound is vibration and we are vibration, then we are in essence sound. And so that's where I like to hang out and like to lean into, is how deep does this rabbit hole go, and how powerful and what capacity do we have to work with consciousness as we explore the different layers of sound.
Oh, this is getting really exciting. I mean, I believe everything is energy, but then I'm going to have to ask you to define vibrational. What's the difference between frequency and vibration? In not too scientific terms.
I know, I don't want to get too
I know
scientific
you can get
either.
really
It's
scientific with me because you're an expert at this.
Oh, I don't know, but I'm really passionate about it, as you said at the beginning.
I'm passionate about you being passionate about it. You're on the right show. So sorry, please continue.
No worries. Well, frequency is just a measurement of vibration in essence. So frequency is the number of times that the wavelength cycles per second. And so you can measure then, different tones have different frequencies. So they're moving slower or faster. And that's why if you then take that model, because, obviously with our ears, when we tend to talk about sound, we're going to look at what we can hear with our ears, right? And just expanding out of our potential or our range of sound, there's ultrasound and infrasound, and there are animals and on the planet that actually work with sound beyond what we can hear. So we're limiting ourselves just by having that frame of reference that sound is 20 to 20,000 hertz that we hear with our ears. And so if you expand out, what's happening is you're getting wavelengths of frequency that are either faster or slower as they move through time. And Here we go, getting too technical.
No, it's
But
good.
but if you then take that and expand it out, extrapolate it out to, okay, well that's sound frequencies, and we got infrasound underneath that, which is undersound, and we got ultrasound, which is over the sound of what we can hear, beyond the sound of what we can hear. And then you go even further and you say, well, actually, what I'm seeing with my eyes is vibrations as well. There's an actual frequency to the colors that I'm seeing with my eyes. And those are actually 40 times greater frequencies than what we're hearing with our ears. And so, in essence, my eyes are vibrational interpreters just as my ears are. And if I then remove that limitation of sound being 20 to 20,000 hertz that I hear with my ears, then I can start to lean into this idea that, oh, I'm not only just hearing in frequencies and vibration, but I'm seeing, and there is some science now that's showing that we're tasting and smelling on a quantum level through vibration. And our senses are then, starting to pick that up. And then you can take it even further and you can say, oh, my emotions, I can measure my electromagnetic frequency of my heart and of my brain. So emotions and thoughts then become frequency or sound. And then you can go on and on and on. And I look at it as all of consciousness then is an infinite spectrum of vibration or frequency. Mm-hmm. You could call it energy if you wanted to.
But vibrations are more technical.
I use them quite interchangeably.
Term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So hope that makes sense.
It's fantastic. But and feeling sound as well. I mean, we've all felt sound, how it feels in our body.
Absolutely. I mean, this is why it's so exciting to start to work with sound in a healing way, because if we can all relate to that, we can all say, I've heard songs that elicit an emotion of sadness or of joy or of bliss, or it's like our emotions start to come out. We actually can feel the sound. And if you've been in a room and you've toned with people, what I mean by that is just singing a note, elongating a note, which is a practice that they do in different traditions and cultures, is chanting or toning or mantra, this kind of stuff. You can actually feel those vibrations in your body. And it's not just an imagination, like it's actually what's happening. Because if you I like to call well, these days I like to call sound as like a COVID safe hug.
Okay,
because
that's a good one, a COVID safe hug.
yeah, because you're literally touching each other with your voice. And even like the beautiful thing that I found over the last year, because most of my work was in person and doing groups and retreats and such. And when all that shut down, I was able to get into portals like this through Zoom or whatnot and bring groups together. And I thought, oh, it's not going to translate, but it actually does translate. And you can actually transmit the sound and the intentionality behind the sound through this type of medium, which is fascinating. But back to my original thing, what I wanted to say about healing being like it's such a good thing through sound to have this opportunity to heal with it, because we're working on 3 different levels. Then is that you making the sound, okay, it obviously is your vocal cords vibration. Let's just use our voice, right? Instruments are the same, but it's just different frequencies. So we're using our voice. So my vocal cords vibrate, they push up against the air, and then those molecules in the air vibrate, and then they impact my eardrum, obviously, to then hear. Well, not only is the eardrum picking up those vibrations, but also our body is, because it's mostly water, right? And so water is 4 times a greater conductor of sound than air is. So the cells in our body then start to move to the sounds that it's being exposed to. And so when those cells start to move, it's the same biological reaction as if somebody was touching you, because that touch, the heat from the body, the sensations of touch actually then create oxytocin, for example, amongst other chemicals that help you to relax, help you to feel love, help you to be more at peace. So on a physical level, the sound is actually eliciting a similar response as if you were being held, if you were being, touched or embraced. And so that's why I say sound is like a COVID safe hug.
It's yeah, fascinating. I'm deeply intently listening to your voice, so keep going.
Okay. So that's the physical level. And then I mean, I'm just looking at healing, like just really distill healing down, and what does it look like, and what we're finding in and what Western medicine is finding, where it is missing, like disease is on the rise. Obviously we've got these viruses that we're dealing with now. We have all these different things that are happening with in our society, adrenal fatigue, ADHD, on and on and on, like all these different ailments and diseases, and they're just like spiking. And they distilled it down that 85% of these ailments can be traced back to stress, right? And so if you look at stress, well, where is stress in our body? Well, stress is in the mind, because we're holding on to repetitive thoughts or anxious thoughts, or the past, the future, this kind of thing. So we're struggling here. We have a tension there. Or there's tension in our body, there's holding, there's a contraction within our body, or there's emotions that we just haven't given ourselves the space to actually feel, so we suppress those and restrict those. So there's 3 places in our body where we have restrictions: is the body, mind, and the emotion. And so if you look at sound, what I just explained was the physical component, how it's impacting that physical component then to create a relaxation or an opening. So that elicits a healing response. And then also, if you start to explore what's going on in the brain neurologically as you're listening to or making sound, those are the 2 most active things that your brain will ever do in your lifetime. Number 1 is making sound or music, and number 2 is actually listening to sound or music. So it's like exercise for the brain, and it actually then stimulates the entire nervous system, and it allows a space for, either with my work, what I do is I like to work with the biology and the neurology in a way that we are triggering a stress response so that we can then learn how to relax that stress response. So I work on both ends of the spectrum, whereas I see a lot of sound healing work is more soothing and relaxing, which is very important, obviously, with our stimulated modern worlds. Yeah. But we can go both ways. And so the sound is impacting our neurology and the physicality. And then the third component of emotion comes in, because, like I said at the beginning of this little monologue that I'm doing.
Yeah. You're diving deep. That's why you're on the show.
Yeah, is the it elicits emotion, and there's actual studies that show that dopamine's released, serotonin's released. There's different chemicals that are released as we listen to different musical notes and tones and rhythms. And so we have then the capacity through sound to work on all 3 of the levels that actually are creating the imbalances in our system to then create the disease or the stress or the ailment. And so it's like a full meal deal, right? So it's incredible.
Yes, I'd love to talk about all the work you do, the incredible work you do in a minute. But first of all, I just want to say I love how you called this a portal. Zoom a portal. I think, number 1,
Yes.
That's fantastic. And you talked about, in the absence of the physical touch, you can use the vocal cords or sound, which is so relevant in our current climate. Call it what you will. It's not the same as being held. Or is that psychological? Well, I'm asking you the question: is that just my perception that the sound is enough to activate our cells, similar to a hug?
Well, yeah, I would agree with you. Like, I'd much rather be lying down in an embrace with somebody than listening to them tone in my ear. But the actual biology and the how the body receives it is almost identical. And that what I found through, that's what I mean, working in this kind of medium. I always used to feel the need to be in a room with somebody to be able to produce the harmonics and octaves that come out of these instruments together. And then I would actually go around and physically place my hands on people to give them that sense of comfort, that sense of safety as they're going through the processes. And whether or not that's required is much more in question now than it was a year ago, because I've done so much deep work through this medium, and I haven't had that capacity to actually touch or embrace or hold somebody through their trauma or their stresses or whatever's going on for them. But yet they still get to this place where they feel held and they feel like they're safe, and they can let go, and they can release into what it is that's causing the imbalance, to then open up into a place of peace and release and so forth, healing.
Yeah, that's great. I also just wanted to touch on, I mean, well, most people have a voice box. Are words important? Well, of course they're important, but
Yes.
I
I
know
think
you've talked about this before, but the words or the tone of our voice, or some people have, I like some people's voices more than others. Is that vibration, or how would you define that?
Well, I think there's lots of components that are
Okay.
creating that experience, and one of them being that um, what sound does. So sound's one of the most ancient parts of us, right? That doesn't sound right.
No,
It's
it's fine.
like it's one of the first systems that develops. So we're actually hearing in our bodies before we're doing a lot of other things before we're born. So it's one of the first systems to develop in the fetus, and and so it's quite an innate part of us, and it's an extension of the nervous system, and it's an extension of a um, safety gate. Let's say it gauges whether or not you are safe or you're in threat. You know, you hear a loud noise in a bush or something, and you turn to look at it. Like, it was the sound that initiated that initial, am I safe? Is there something behind me kind of experience? And this is going on. If you look at the senses, it's one of the only senses that we can't turn off. Like, we can, we can plug our nose, we can do all kinds of different things that we're not, but close our eyes and so forth. But the ears are always working. Even when we're asleep, they're actually hearing things. That's why, parents can be asleep in like the deepest sleep, and their child cries, and they get up and they go tend to the
Yes,
child, right?
I didn't think of that.
So
Yeah.
your ears are always on, and they're always taking in sound. And this is one of the problems, I think, that is not yet truly identified in our society, is that we're very good at ignoring the sounds around us. And I mean, even just sitting here in my shed in the backyard near a national reserve, it's like I can still hear the cars in the distance, and I can still hear, different things. And I'm sure these lights and these computers are sending hums and buzzes and whatnot. And in office buildings in cities, there's so much more noise, and our nervous system is receiving that. And so that's creating an extra stress on us. And these noises are at a different frequency than what we naturally hear, for example, like a bird song or a wave crashing, and those are more of a slower rhythm, a slower frequency that create more harmony and peace within us. Whereas like a jackhammer or a truck driving by, or brakes squealing, this kind of stuff is a stress response that's initiated. So I've already lost what your question was and what I was talking about.
I was talking about words and
Oh yeah.
but
Of
I just
course,
wanted to
words.
touch on that. So sound pollution. So even if we have earplugs and we're blocking out these
Oh, those
potentially,
are fantastic. If you got those like noise canceling headphones and
yes,
stuff, like
but it's
that's
still affecting our body.
exactly 100%, because your body's picking up those. I mean, there's you look at some people, like that they actually can't hear, but they can play music, or they can listen to music because they can feel the speakers of the vibrations, and they've practiced actually how to receive music in that way, right? I saw somebody on one of those like American Idol or voice things or whatever, like she's totally went deaf, but she was still playing music and singing because she learned how to feel the song and the band through her feet, and was like, whoa. So yeah, our bodies are totally picking it up.
Great. So just back to words and sound.
Words, yes. You got to keep me on track, because I
That's
just go
fine.
boom.
That's my job. So words, how important are the words that we speak compared to in our vocal box compared to the actual sounds that we make?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention as well before I went on that other tangent, was that, your interpretation of a sound is different than my interpretation of a sound. So different voices to you are going to sound more soothing to different voices to me. And that's based on our experience. So that system in us that is actually the autonomic nervous system, basically, that's determining whether we're safe or whether we're in threat. And it's utilizing our ears to actually establish that. So it starts to record the sounds that we hear, and then puts the emotion on top of it, and stores that as a package in our brain, and says, that low tone that I heard was like the saber-toothed tiger that was running through the bush, like, that's dangerous. And I felt fear and danger. And so next time I hear something like that, I'm going to feel fear and danger. And so perhaps like the soothing voice of a low sound, maybe you had a close relationship with your dad, let's say, for example, and he used to sing you to sleep or something, or just his voice was like a place of safety for you.
Yeah.
And so in your nervous system, you've associated that low tone sound with a sense of safety and peace. Whereas maybe somebody was raised by their mother and didn't have a dad in their lives, and the voice pitch was higher. And so those sounds, that wavelength is a bit more. Now words, I'll get to it. Words then, I think absolutely, because but if you take what is the word that is actually, it's the meaning that the word has to you that's actually the impact, right? So if you divorce the meaning out, do the words actually have an impact? And I question that. I do, because I'm not so sure. I mean, I can hear somebody say I love you in 10 different languages with the intention behind it, and I can still feel the love, right? But I might not know the words I love you in that other language.
So it's the intention when you...
I think it's the intention, and that's what I've I've kind of through my work have explored that, because there's a lot of weight is put onto the different notes that we play, or the tones, or the mantra. There's sacred texts that have certain mantras that are supposed to create a relief of certain ailments or things, or move you towards enlightenment, so forth. And whether or not you know what those mean, or whether or not those words actually have that capacity, I don't know, because I've worked with different tones and different frequencies, different songs, different mantras, and the intention behind it has been the same. And then the results that I see in the clients are also the same. So positive, beneficial, regardless of the mantra I'm doing, regardless of the frequency I'm doing.
It's the intention. I mean, I could say
yeah.
I love you in 10 different ways and have different meanings each time in English.
But that's right. Exactly right. Some of those might not be so loving.
What about the power of our own voice to us?
Yes.
How does my own voice or your own voice affect the individual?
Oh, so many good questions. I'm loving this.
Oh, thanks.
Well, the beautiful thing about our voice is that it's not only that we're then hearing it, it's that we're actually moving and vibrating the bones in our skull, which actually satiates the nervous system as well. And then we're also expanding upon the breath. So a lot of these ancient practices are very similar in their technique, in that you're singing a mantra, or you're toning a single vowel sound, and you're elongating it. And in doing so, you obviously have to take a deeper breath. And then on the tone, it then expands that breath out. So, in doing that type of breathing, a longer inhale and a much longer exhale then stimulates the rest and repair part of our nervous system. So it takes us out of a stress response. So that in itself is beneficial. So there's components to our own voice and how it's impacting us that are more beneficial than just receiving. If that makes sense.
It does. My mind's just gone to, oh my gosh, I bet no one has ever come over and put their Spotify playlist on for you since you're the music expert. It's like coming to cook for a 5-star chef.
Oh, I don't know. I don't like to call myself a musician, because I've not been trained in any music or anything. I've just been, just love music. And and then I've come, I think that's kind of why I've got a different slant on things than a lot of people that are working with sound in a healing way, is because many times it's musicians that are just passionate about helping people, and they find that, through mantra, through kirtan or chanting or working with crystal bowls or gongs or something, they can do that in a healing way, and then utilize their skill in a different way. But for me, it was like I was working with massage. I was doing massage work, and then I was doing energy work and healing work, and then all of a sudden that started to translate into vibration and frequency. And then I realized, how impactful that was to add that to the session. So
yes, and I have been to one of your sessions. But so if sound is vibration, everything is energy. I'm taught to believe that every thought, every action, every vibration doesn't disappear. It's always there. Does that mean the sounds that we play, or the sounds that we talk, or the sounds that we hear don't disappear? They're always there?
I like to think so. I read something once where it was talking about on a quantum level on how, like I mentioned, the vocal cords vibrate, and then the molecules in air are bouncing off of each other and vibrating, passing those vibrations along. And then on a quantum level, those particles in the air, when they actually hit, it's like a spark is ignited. And that spark is an infrared light. And so at that base quantum level, it's like poof, there's a spark of light. And if you think of light and how it travels, so sound obviously travels at a lower frequency than the speed of light. But in there, you actually, in the sound, produces light that then transmits the intentionality. I like to think, there's no science around this yet, but I like to think that the intentionality is then infused in that microscopic light, that's in infrared light, that's sparked through the molecules hitting each other, that then ignites and goes beyond space and time.
Oh, I love that. That's very interesting. So is there such a thing as silence? Is there silence?
Good question.
I mean, I can't hear much now except your voice, but I'm sure something could be picked up.
Well, that's kind of like, that's what some of these creation stories lend to, is that there was this eternal place of silence. In the beginning there was the word, but before that there was no word. And it's like there's this place of silence that which actually holds the space for then the vibration to emerge. And if you didn't have silence, then you wouldn't be able to produce a sound, because it's actually the space between the sounds that allow for the different frequencies and vibrations to exist.
Very interesting. And okay, I'm just thinking about that one. So you mentioned before about how sound connects us and how we remember sound and that the power of sound. But if you don't mind talking a little bit more, how sound can heal individuals. And I know you work with very large groups as well.
Yeah, we do. And it constantly blows me away. And I think the basis of it stems from that concept then that, at any ailment or discomfort or disharmony in our lives, there's a restriction or a holding within us, either on the mental, emotional, or physical levels. And that sound actually has the capacity then to impact those three aspects.
To help release them?
To help to release them, yeah.
How do you manage to work out how to do this? Lots of trial and error?
Yes and no. I mean, I think innately we want to feel better. We want to let go. It takes a lot. I think it's our natural state to actually release and to open and to express.
Yes.
And that the holding, the shutting down, the numbing down of what's actually going on in us that then creates the imbalance, is something that we're trying to find ways to get rid of it, to let it go, to move it. And if you look at sound being vibration, it's like it creates movement. And so I like this gong behind me. That's another portal that I like to refer to.
Oh.
And that sucker, when you start banging the gong, there's so many overtones and harmonics that come through. There's no escape, basically. You can try and hold on, but it's going to just like wash through you, and it's going to move your cells. It's going to elicit emotion. It's going to release thoughts. It's very challenging to try and hold a train of thought as you're listening to that gong sound. And so in all of that is an innate release, or letting go. And I think that's the basis of the work. Is my initial intention is to bring people, well, first and foremost, they've got to feel safe. Like if somebody doesn't feel safe with me or trust the process, then it's not going to, they're going to hold on for dear life, because they're going to be in a contracted state. They're going to be in a holding state. And that's why I do tend to lean towards longer processes. Like we've got a 4-day retreat that we do. We've got online group coaching that spans a space of 6 months. And it's like, because during that time, we get to build a rapport and a sense of safety and a sense of trust with the people we're working with, that then they can just let go and just be in the process. And so then it leads to my second component, which is to elicit that response of release of the thought patterns that are creating the discomfort, the anxiety, the fear, the whatever's going on. Release of those emotions that we've bottled up and pushed down because of shame or guilt, because it's not okay to feel that way, or whatever. And the release of then the conditioned tensions that we hold in our body because we haven't taken the time to relax and truly allow ourselves the space for rest and nurturing. And so if I can create that initial response of, oh, I can let go, then we get in, and then we then start to create this symphony of sound that creates this opportunity for an expansion of consciousness that allows us to start to traverse. So remember the sounds that we hear, and then the vision is like a certain different frequency of sounds, and you can go through emotions and thoughts, and you can go even further than that. And this is what's really blows my mind is that by having an intention to open people's awareness and consciousness up, that they do, and that we can traverse beyond our 5 senses. And with the sound, it actually becomes like a bridge, and it carries us. This is going to get woo-woo here.
No, I'm excited. I'm very excited. I completely believe also that the emotions that we hold and repress do create sickness within the body. I'm excited. Please go on.
Okay. Well, this is like, people just, it blows me away every time it happens, but people are having experiences with loved ones that have died, decades ago, and they're talking to the guardian angels, let's say, or having, these like psychedelic experiences just from working with their breath through the chanting and the sounds and the experience. And it's like, no drugs needed, and we have this access to a greater potential and a different ability to perceive reality that is not just, so I mean, those are exciting and fantastical kind of experiences to strive for, but it's not just about that. It's about building a relationship with that part of ourselves that's not attached to the 5 senses, that is then bound by this time and space, and actually creating a gateway to something, a larger consciousness, a greater consciousness, that then can inspire our lives, and for us to then take actions from a different vantage point and create a different life than to actually continue the same thought processes that we're attached to from the senses that we're receiving information to create the same life. If that makes sense.
It sure does. It's very exciting. And if you can open that portal in someone, and I guess it's not going back to the old patterning is the challenge for many people.
And that's, again, the beauty of sound.
Right, okay.
Because it's a visceral experience, right?
Yeah.
So we can work with the mind. We can, go to psychology and work with the mind and change those patterns, but it's still ingrained in the body. And the same with the emotions. If you have an emotional release, if you're not working with the thought patterns of that, it's still ingrained in the thoughts or the body, or vice versa, But when you're hitting all 3, boom, 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 it's like, then you've created a shift in the mind, the emotion, and the physicality, and you actually have a different reference point to then gauge your life upon. And I always say, like, the main process that I work with is a 4-stage process. And we first stress the system, which is the expansion. Then we go into an unwinding, where we elicit the response for the expansion to happen in the 3rd stage. And that's where these, fantastical experiences happen. And then the 4th stage, being the most critical, is called the integration. And that once you've had this experience of a new way of seeing your challenges, or of being in a relationship, or being with yourself, or healing the loss of a loved one or something like that, it's like, once you've had that, if you can't embody that and bring it into your life, then there's really no point to it. It just becomes spiritual tourism, as I like to call it.
God, you've got some good terminologies there.
I've been at this for a while.
Tourism.
These little things, these little nuggets just land, and you're like, oh, that sounds good. I'll keep that.
I mean, even the spiritual tourism can't hurt.
This the
The
spiritual,
spiritual tourism,
yeah,
it can't hurt. I get
it can't
because
hurt. No,
I guess you have
absolutely.
to be, have the intention that you really want to change. It's up to the individual. It might not be the right time for them, and they're happy to do a bit of sightseeing, I guess.
Well, that's exactly right. And I would encourage much more sightseeing into the spiritual realm, because I think it's one of the things that's lacking in our society, in our world right now, is this relationship with our spirit, with our souls. And regardless of the conflicts and the challenges that we're confronted with, especially over the last year, at the basis of it, it's like, well, where's your soul? Where's your spirit? And what is it wanting to inspire in your life? And these types of conversations are rare and few and far between. So
Not on Passion Harvest.
no, this is great.
And almost sound is a way that you've facilitated to foster that gap, that bridging between the soul and the individual.
Yeah, I think so. It's been my experience anyway.
That's what wonderful work you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'd love at the end of the show to hear that gong.
Oh, the gong. Yeah, we can.
What other questions have I not asked about sound that you must think? I mean, do you think you? Can I just ask you, when you hear someone's voice, do you think about the sound of their voice or not?
No,
Oh,
no,
good.
I'm
Okay.
not that hypercritical. No.
What other questions have I not asked that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, wow. I think we've covered a lot of landscape there, haven't
We
we?
have.
Hmm. I think what I would like to share is maybe just a little tool, maybe for the
That would
listeners
be
to
amazing.
because all this stuff, it's like, oh, how do I get to a workshop and where do I get a big gong? It's like, well, it doesn't have to be that elaborate. And at the basis of it, you have your own voice, which I always say is the most powerful healing instrument in the world, is your voice. And so I just what we've been doing in our retreats and in our coaching programs and so forth is before we start anything. And we found, especially working in this kind of medium online, is that it translates this sense of connection and the intentionality behind it. And it allows us then to relax. And yes, it's called heart centering. It's a very, very simple process. And it allows you to use your voice to expand your breath and to just relax. And that's really the key of it. So could I just take like 3 minutes and
Oh
just
my
walk you through
gosh,
it?
let's do it. I can't wait.
It's really
And I'm
simple.
sure the viewers and listeners will love it too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's very simple. What I like to do is I take my left hand and I just place it on the center of my chest. And then I take the right hand and you can't see it from here, but I just take the thumb and I kind of let it rest in the navel point, and then the palm of the hand wraps around what's called the dantian. And that's a powerful point that we won't have time to talk about here. But in doing this, with the posture, with the hands like that, we literally embrace ourselves. We're literally holding ourselves. And this is a safe and beautiful place to go to just to begin with. So that's the starting point. And if you ask my friends, you'll see me doing this in the lines at Kohl's sometimes when people are being really slow and obnoxious. I'll just say, okay, let's
Center
drop
yourself.
in. But here we are. And the beautiful thing then of this posture, if you want to just close your eyes down and just go into this space of holding yourself, the beautiful thing then is that as you relax, that right hand can then hold the sensation of the breath expanding down into the belly. So if you let your breath expand, the belly will expand as well. And you feel it down there in the right hand. And then the left hand is sitting in another critical position. So it not only feels the rhythm of your breath, it can also feel the beat of your own heart. And so right here, we're holding the two unique rhythms of life that are moving through you, your breath and your heart. And so this alone, like if you're in public on a bus or something and you can do this and no one's gonna take you away in a straitjacket, right? And it relaxes your nervous system, relaxes your mind, and relaxes your whole body. So you could spend as long as you want here. And then the next component, once I start to tune into this space, this relaxation, then the easiest approach is to just find a sense of gratitude. You know, how good is it that we have this breath and this heart that's beating in our body, and we actually have this body that's carrying us through this life? Like, wow, how lucky are we? And it doesn't take any effort for us to actually breathe or beat that heart. It just does it. Life just moves through us. Just feel a sense of gratitude for that. And let that gratitude, then just imagine it moving through your entire body. And then we use that as an intention, the gratitude that we're feeling, and we put it into the voice. A simple sound that we can use is the sound ah, because that just means the jaw relaxes, the tongue relaxes. We're all about relaxation. And we'll just do 3 ahs. You can do it as long as you want. For this, we'll just do 3. So just a deep breath in. You know, and again, putting the gratitude into the voice. And allow yourself to receive gratitude as you give it out this 3rd time. Beautiful. And it's that simple. And I like to do that for a few minutes, but just even 3 times, you can feel the sensations, the vibration in your body. And any situation you find yourself in, you can just use that as a place to reconnect, drop in, relax, feel good. And then just slowly take a deep breath in. Exhale out, let the hands relax. Let your eyes slowly open. You don't want to shock the system. And there we go.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So yeah, I wouldn't advise to doing that toning in the bus or in the line at Kohl's, but you can do it in your mind and at home. And yeah, that's the basis of a lot of the practices that I do is that kind of thing.
Well, I'm so relaxed now. I'm sure if our listeners or watchers will be relaxed as well. Yeah. All your details will be in the show notes, but where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, probably go to my newest collaboration, which is Live and Flow. So that's where all the newest evolved works and processes are. So it's liveandflow.co.
Okay.
No M, just the
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest. It's been so insightful. I'm going to re-listen to the show and definitely practice that heart-centered. Are you able to bang that gong for us?
I am. Let's just hope that we don't blow the speakers out. I'm just going to.
Okay.
I have to turn that on, turn some filters off. It's been.
If it's a hassle, don't worry.
No, it's just like grab a mallet now and hit it and see what happens.
Okay. I don't want you blowing out your speakers.
Well, it'll be your ears, not mine.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think we're all right. Can you hear it coming through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matt.
No worries. Hopefully it wasn't too distorted. I usually have a whole bunch of mics around and turn
we're
the
not
filters
that technical
off
yet.
Yeah, well, I've had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I've loved being on Passion Harvest.
Oh, thank you so much. I love what you're doing. It's incredible. We need to get more of these kinds of conversations out there.
Definitely. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. If you like this episode, please do subscribe for weekly passionate inspirational interviews.